Clearly someone's been in here. Reasonable. Looks like we need a bolt for there too. So this is exactly the kind of quality craftsmanship you want to look for. So I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to use a wooden block to prop up the window. The previous owner or someone in the history of this vehicle either had a very angry child or a very angry adult, not that there's too much of a difference, and just smashed on it. So this, I believe, lived happily for many years in this track, along with its 50% counterpart. What you'll notice is this orange wire, well, half of it's here, part of it's here. The other half got pulled into the door tether. This one here almost suffered a similar fate, but just got super chewed up. Give her a little flip. Oh yeah, she just shucks right down on there. Okay, here we are back to the window. So I just took my cleaner and I cleaned most importantly, the bottom, 2 or 3 inches that are hidden. There's just nasty, scuzzy stuff all over that. So I'm going to worry about that once it's installed. But this area that is inaccessible when installed, I cleaned up on both sides. I'm kind of wary of something. So this, no way of knowing if this is an original piece. It seems like a decent one. There's no markings or part number on it that I can tell. Obviously it fit in place, seemingly fine. This is what we got from the 95. So it's got an additional bracket here, and I know someone has been in here and they did a very bad job and there's hardware missing. So with that taken into account, that may not even be the right one. However, it was there, the line's mounted up. This seems to be, that's right. So it's got a Bosch part number, which is really nice to see, as well as BROSE. Yeah. Also this part number, which I haven't checked yet, as well as this one that has nothing on it. But, you know what, I should look up that part number. All this to say, it is still just, it's a 2-pin. This is more of a Land Rover style connector. This is also a Land Rover style connector from 1997, or on a 1997 vehicle. This was on a 1995 vehicle. What I'm getting at is, if you go to buy a new window regulator for a 1997 Land Rover Discovery from Atlantic British, you go to Atlantic British's website, you pull up passenger rear window regulator. It gives you just a stock item, which is supposed to be standard from 94 to 99. So if I were to buy one new, I'm led to believe that it would work on both this one and that one, as well as the one in the junkyard. So why now? And to be fair, I haven't put this in. It may line up with a different set of holes and work perfectly. I don't know. I would hope so. But what I'm getting at is this is visibly different from that one. We've got the pivot. I left these in because these are the ones that slip through slots. Hopefully that lines up with these. And then you've got these two, which were Loctited bolts. They did look aftermarket, but you see these are parallel and these are parallel. There's no semblance of this bracket on this one. However, there is, this little indentation for it, perhaps. And then the motor also mounts up differently. You've got 3 there, 3 there. So I'm wondering if there might be some sort of amalgamation that I can do. If this does all fit up perfectly, then I'll obviously have to replace this connector with this one, which is totally fine. This is another interesting thing here. This is actually it's got its own little sub harness. Yeah, a bunch of yapping. So next step is I'm going to actually mount this now that I have all the hardware, because remember there were some, at least 3 bolts I think missing. So we'll get that in because that's not changing. and it'll have all the hardware in it, and I'll be all happy hunky-dory. Got ahead of myself, spoke too soon. I did get all this duplicate stuff just to be safe. So you got this module here. This was completely missing, so I now have one of these. This attaches to in there from behind, obviously, and this slides up and down. This mechanism does work. Trust me. I got the whole inner latch assembly. If you remember, this rod is what was detached. It hooks onto the back of this, which is broken. So we have a new one with an intact lever. And I also have the hardware for that, which is in slightly better shape. So before I do anything with the windows, I'm going to double check that what is in here is in good shape and everything lines up well and is within spec. I think I'm not going to change more of this than I have to, but I do believe that there are a couple of parts which I can fix and improve right off the bat. This is going out of here. Another note, this is as good a time as any, Reed, the best time to grease up all of your contact points. I use white lithium grease in a quote-unquote sealed environment. If you have it, so, you know, within a door, this is theoretically sealed, but you can see I got a nice little smear on that sliding mechanism. I've got this one here, which attaches to the interior door pull. I just smeared up some lithium grease on that, gave it a spin on both sides. So all this stuff should be really fluid, really soft and fluid, as well as in a perfect world, everything would be nice and smooth and lubricated consistently, but what actually ends up damaging this stuff is it works great for 15, 20 years or whatever. As the grease dries out, the little plastic and nylon and metal pieces just fatigue, and humans have the same pull on it, but they mechanically have less give as time goes on, and that's when stuff starts breaking. So once you get everything disassembled, any moving points, just put a little bit of grease, work it in, and make sure it's got thorough coverage. Okay, we're making some very curious progress. So I was spinning this thing around and wiggling it, the 95s, the 95 regulator. I said, you know what? These cars are really simple. There's no way that they have a different door, totally different configuration. I went back to Atlantic British and looked up the model, looked up the part number for the regulator, and they show this one. The one in their picture on their website, and their pictures are super accurate, shows this one. So, well, wait a second. I still got this out of a 95. Then I kind of started wiggling it around. This is where the old regulator mounted, and here, and here. And I was just kind of, you know, I should have taken a picture in the junkyard, but I had faith in myself to remember it. And then I started looking at some spare holes here, and obviously there's one there, one there, one here, and this big mount, which does not exist. So this has a wider spread of 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, it only used, I believe, these two plus a single, actually no, I take it back. These were two aftermarket bolts that probably came with this assembly. These are the two original ones. Those two original ones fit in these slots. So all you have to do is loosen them and pop it out, which seems like an improved design, maybe even just 2 short years later. So I think I'm going to try 1, 2, and this is, I'm going to use the original hardware, but this, and this, and this, and this, and I really like this, the rigidity of having this arm that sticks out. So I'm going to try those 4. I think those are the only 4 that line up, but this has a catch spring, a return spring. It's got a bigger, this just had the round piece that broke. Where is it? This is our round pivot piece, whereas this one, I'll see if I can show it. Yeah. This has a so square piece. And obviously that is going to go right into that slot. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run with this one. And I wish this had power so I could actually hook it up and test it. But I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm hesitant to start cutting these up. But either way, I'm going to get that mounted up and make sure everything looks good. What would be ideal is if I had power on the vehicle and I could swing this arm all the way down, then you can actually remove that piece, slide it on to this, and then manually drop that window and line it back up. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit and I'll check back in once I get something figured out. Okay, blood's really starting to boil on this one. So I got this off. These loose. Popped it off. Go to install it. Pried up the tabs, because obviously it's contained like that. Pried the tabs up on one side. And it's too fat. So presumably, this piece that's on the window in the junkyard is exactly what I need. But this nice big piece, which is exactly what I want to use, is too fat. And I didn't think to get this off when I was there. That's frustrating. All right, guys. So here is the sticky wicket. Got the window out from the junkyard. And sure enough, this is a big channel for that style of window regulator, but look at this side, look at this side. It is press fit on, which the green disco Jimmy, our disco, is nice enough to have a really nice factory tint on it, an original Land Rover window. This is an original Land Rover window. It's a nice factory period window, but I'm just wary about trying to pry this off. Even if I get it off without breaking the glass here, I'm just wary of doing it there. And this is the last time I'm coming out here. I've been to this junkyard for 2 different vehicles 5 times in the past month. It's a bargain up to a point, especially with a 20-25 minute drive. So just trying to figure out the best course of action. I think I'm tempted to just leave this and go buy a new regulator. Now that I've already, a sunk cost would be to say, oh no, I've done all this work, I can't leave it. But if I go home and I break my only matching window, then I'm going to be extremely upset. So we'll see. I did decide to get the radiator. Probably another foolish choice, especially considering how much was packed into it, but I don't see any signs of actual leakage otherwise. So, if nothing else, yeah, it's a good factory OEM spare. Replacement for a bronze, brass bronze OEM one is over $600. So that is a good one to have. Well, hey, at least it wasn't too hot today. Parking in the shade here for what was it, half an hour, 45 minutes, the temperature actually came down about 4 degrees. So, yeah. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, so here is our compromise, and I very much consider it a compromise. Not super happy with it, but the whole theme of this build restoration is to use parts that I come across, which this is the first time I'm sort of regretting that, but we're not too far in. This is the original window. This vehicle came with a pretty nice factory, I believe it's a factory tint, more so on the rear windows than the front. You know what? Okay. Now that I'm looking at it, that is an aftermarket tint, I think. So, anywho, back to the case at hand. As we've gone over many times now, this is a different style track for this regulator. This, as we saw in the junkyard, is a big square. Mechanically, let's open the window and smash the window. Open the door and smash the window right away. Mechanically, I like this design more. having this cross bracing here and these 3 points here. And as I've found actually working on Mercedes windows regulators, a lot of the issues I've found with window regulators, at least this mechanical gear driven style, is they start to warp, which puts tension on them. And I think this is going to minimize that, if not prevent it. I think in going to more of a universal application, they actually scaled it down mechanically, which may have caused issues. This seems like more of a purpose-built one. They used it for a couple of years in Range Rovers, Land Rovers, and that seems like more of a broad strokes application. So what we're going to do, we got this cleaned up. I am going to try and get this installed onto this while it's free-floating. Again, the vehicle doesn't have power. I may put the battery, well, what I really should do is put the battery in it to test it first. Wouldn't that be fun? So if you're following along here, what further contributes to this likely being an aftermarket replacement, the one that came out, is we have a blue wire and a pink wire. From this Junkyard motor, we have a gray with white and a gray with orange. If we look at the factory harness, we have gray with orange and gray with white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this connection. I'm going to give it a bit of, I'm basically going to kind of match these up. So I'm going to cut this probably around here. Actually, anytime, even if I think it's, the last thing in the world, I'm never coming back to this. Who knows, if I have to go back to it for some reason, I want to leave a section here. And that's another benefit to crimping, is it's really easy to cut a crimp connector and maintain the length of your wires. So probably somewhere in here, I'm just going to cut it off flush, put crimp connectors on here, and then match it up with this. So you'll be able to see, and that will then link. You can see we're going to have gray with white, and on the other side, gray with orange, matched up again. So in this configuration, using this connector, that becomes orange to blue. So this is the actual connection I'm going to make. Orange to blue, pink to white. So we have white, pink, back to white. Let's try that. If this all goes sideways and breaks, I'm gonna be pretty bummed, but at least it'll be on camera and you'll get to enjoy it. Here goes something. Oh, all right. Can work with this. Because the window is at the top of its rotation, or, area. Oh, no. Oh. Okay. Oh. All right. That's it. Well, that was boring. I mean, still have to secure it, but, wow. Not out of the woods yet. But cool beans. So for safety purposes, I'm not going to show what I just did, but suffice to say, the window was sitting up too high, so I needed it to come down so I could mount the window. And I used a power source with some probes. If you want the correct way to do this, leave a comment and I will do a video on how to do a much better job of accomplishing what I accomplished, but I'm not going to document that here. So, now we can put all the hardware in. All right, team. Any of you that have worked on cars before know that nothing guarantees that you'll have to do something again, like tidying it up nicely as if it's done for good. So, got all of our hardware in. Might as well do the run through. So we've got bolt there, bolt there, bolt there, bolt there, bolt there, and bolt down there. I swapped that out with a 10 mil head just because it's a shorter one, and the threads are kind of buggered up, so I just used the first little bit with a slightly shorter screw, shorter bolt. These are the 10 mil, came from the original, and then one 10 mil, and the other 10 mil that came from the original, the one that came with this vehicle. So this is, we've got our, this is the one that we spliced in, got that taped up. Everything's kind of in its original wire lay. I really am careful about wire lay. I did a couple of little tag loops every so often to keep the wires together. Going to be tucked away there. I'm not going to do the final cinch down until it's completely done, and that might even be down the road after I've started it. I'm going to wrap these together and kind of wrap them so that they can hang here freely, and we're not going to be dealing with that. This is the spot for the window switch, so I got this routed up, and if you remember from the junkyard, maybe you don't, but the weather seal, like the 3M plastic that sticks on the edge, there's an opening somewhere around here for this connector, and this connector is going to sit right about here. That's the back of the window switch. Okay, gang, so it is a week later because that's just how life works. I've tested and confirmed the motor does work. I suspect the window control module needs some repair, which is to be expected, and I am well equipped to do that. But what we're going to do is we're just going to tidy this, going off of the fact that the motor does work. I'm going to go ahead and just put it all together, which involves putting the door card back on. I've got all the clips reinstalled. Going to not permanently. I'm going to do a temporary fix that will likely become a permanent fix, which isn't the best way to do it. But I'm going to tuck this up so it won't be a problem whether I come back in here or not. I'm going to tighten these up a little bit, but not so much so that they're just completely crimped up. And this will be routed up that way, and I'm going to put the weather guard on, put the door card on, and then I'll put the interior weather trim and the exterior weather trim on in the hopes that I don't have to come in here ever again. If I do, then it's going to be just a matter of a couple minutes to pop it off. So we'll check back in once that is done. Okay, now we've got the weather guard installed. As you can see, the window switch harness is routed through there. The door lock, get this out of the way and rotate there. This is in place and functional, and it gets kind of, I thought there might be a different way to route that, but it does actually sit behind. You can kind of see the wear marks on the inside. Kind of funky, but either way, so that's done there and there and there. We have our door card with all of the clips now installed, so I'm going to plug in the window switch, make sure the connections are good inside the harness, plug in the window switch first, and then it just ka-chunks in place there. And then I've got the two pieces of trim to put on, and we're going to call this done. But for now, with a lot more work to go on the vehicle itself, we're going to stick this on just to use up the parts and move on. Okay, there it is, all tidied up and done up for now. Don't need the light anymore. So parts that were replaced and added were the door lock, the new switch, and the plastic piece and the screw. Everything, and of course the window and regulator, as you guys have seen. But not to say it's fixed. I think it is because I know the motor's working. But hopefully, we just close the door, move on to other stuff, and forget this even happened because it all works great. I'll be including this piece here with the sale, and if someone's absolutely dying to have it put back together, then they can get a newer style window regulator and reinstall it. So, still got some stuff in there, but yeah, so it's got the non-tinted window, but it's all sealed up. I got the interior and exterior trim back on. I think that's been off for a while because there's lots of debris inside, but there we go. Sitting nice and flush. Okay, now on to the real stuff.